At some point in your life, have you ever felt that inexplicable shiver? That feeling of not being alone in an empty room? Or maybe you've experienced the sensation that someone just brushed past you, even when nobody was around. What we're about to explore today transcends religions, cultures, and even time, a phenomenon as ancient as humanity itself, but rarely fully understood. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this. I'm talking about wandering souls spirits who, for reasons we'll discover together, didn't complete their journey to the other side after physical death. This is not just another video about paranormal phenomena. It's a deep journey into the mysteries of human consciousness and what happens when we get caught between worlds. If this topic touches your heart or sparks your curiosity, don't waste another second. Hit the bell and subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss any revelations about the mysteries that connect our worlds. From the ancient Egyptians with their elaborate funeral rituals to the shamanic practices of the Americas, from Buddhist ceremonies meant to free the soul to African rites of passage, every great civilization recognized this phenomenon. What did they know that we've forgotten? Why do some souls remain while others move on? The answers might be more personal than you think. Perhaps by the end of this video, you'll not only understand the invisible world around us a bit better, but also see your own journey in a new light. Imagine for a moment the final breath, the heart monitor beeping continuously, the feeling that your body has become too heavy to carry, and then lightness, an indescribable lightness, as if all the gravity that once kept you bound to earth simply vanished. Many near-death experience accounts describe that first sensation as an extraordinary release. It's like waking up from a deep dream and realizing that what you thought was reality was only a fraction of existence. The colors are more vivid, the sounds sharper, and there's a mental clarity that surpasses any state of consciousness experienced during physical life. I felt like I could sense and understand everything at once, said Maria, one of my patients who experienced clinical death for 4 minutes during heart surgery. I could see my body on the operating table, but I also felt the doctor's desperation trying to bring me back, my daughter's worry in the waiting room, and even the gentle breeze coming in through the corridor window. But not all transitions are smooth. For some, there is disorientation, confusion, a feeling of being lost in a place that is at once familiar and completely strange. Imagine waking up in your own home, but suddenly not being able to open the doors. You shout, but no one answers. You try to touch your loved ones, but they don't feel your presence. This is the limbo many wandering souls experience, the terrible realization that something fundamental has changed, but without exactly knowing what or why. The first moments after death are crucial. It is when the soul gets its first chance to accept its new reality and make a choice to move toward the light, to the next stage of the spiritual journey, or to remain. But what could be so powerful as to make a soul reject that light? What could be stronger than the natural call for spiritual evolution? I can't leave right now. My daughter still needs me. I need to protect my home and my belongings. My work isn't finished. These aren't just hypothetical phrases. They are real words captured in sessions of spiritual communication, expressing the emotional ties that keep souls attached to the earthly plane. Attachments are like invisible anchors, extraordinarily powerful ones. Carlos was a successful businessman who built a real estate empire from scratch. When he suffered a heart attack at 67, his death was sudden and unexpected. His family soon noticed strange phenomena in his office computers turning on by themselves, drawers opening on their own, documents being rearranged. During an energetic cleaning of the space, Carlos's message was clear. They will lose everything if I'm not here to supervise. The attachment to control, to an identity built as a protector and provider, was so strong that it kept his energy tied to the workplace, unable to trust that his successors could continue his legacy. Or consider the case of Anita, a young mother who died during childbirth. For years, her daughter reported visions of a kind lady who appeared in her room at night, tidying up her blankets and singing lullabies. The maternal bond, so abruptly interrupted in the physical realm, continued to manifest beyond the veil of death. The psychology of attachment isn't just a human phenomenon, it's a spiritual force. Our desires, our worries, our unfinished loves create energetic bonds that don't automatically dissolve when the physical body stops functioning. In many cases, these bonds even intensify without the barrier of physical matter. Edgar Cayce, the famous American psychic, often spoke about how our emotions create thought forms that can persist beyond death. A thought repeated thousands of times, "I can't leave them, I need to finish this, I'm not ready," creates an energetic pattern that can literally anchor a consciousness to a place, person, or situation. And here's an uncomfortable truth. Often, it is our own attachments that inadvertently hold on to those we love. Our inconsolable grief, our refusal to accept the departure, our promises of never letting go can create energetic bonds that make it harder for the soul to move on with its journey. What if I go to hell? I don't deserve peace. God won't forgive me for what I did. The fear of divine judgment can be one of the strongest anchors for a soul in transition. For centuries, many religious traditions emphasized punishment over unconditional love, creating a profound existential terror that persists well beyond physical death. I met Yuan during an energetic cleaning in an old colonial mansion. His presence was palpable, a heavy energy laden with guilt and self-condemnation. During our communication, I discovered that João had been a 19th century farmer who had treated his workers with extreme cruelty. Facing his own death, his belief in eternal punishment was so intense that he refused to move on, choosing limbo over the condemnation he believed he deserved. The paradox is that this self-condemnation becomes its own prison, a form of self-imposed punishment that can last decades, sometimes centuries, in the earthly realm. What if it were you? If your life ended abruptly right now, what beliefs would you carry over to the other side? What judgments do you fear? What guilt remains unforgiven? This is not a rhetorical question. It's an invitation to some deep personal reflection. The difference between religious dogmas and universal spiritual truth is often vast. While many religious institutions have historically used fear as a tool of control, near-death experiences and communications with the other side consistently report encounters with a light of unconditional love, free of judgment. Michaela, a retired nurse who worked in palliative care for 30 years, shared with me her most significant observation. Those who pass peacefully aren't necessarily the most religious, but those who made peace with their actions, who forgave themselves and others. Limiting beliefs work like filters of reality. A soul that firmly believes it doesn't deserve to ascend will create its own experience of non-ascension. A soul convinced it will be harshly judged will project that expectation, creating a state of spiritual paralysis. The American medium James Van Praagh often shares how many souls go through a period of self-judgment, a review not of their failures, but of the love they gave or withheld during their physical life. It's a process of acknowledgement, not punishment. It's important to understand that on the other side of the veil, there isn't an external judge condemning us. It's our own expanded consciousness recognizing the opportunities we missed to love more deeply and live more authentically. I'm not dead. This is a mistake. Why is nobody answering me when I speak? I need to go back home. My family is waiting for me. Denial is a natural reaction when we face realities that are hard to accept, and death is no exception. For souls who departed suddenly, victims of accidents, violence, or rapidly progressing illnesses, the transition can be so abrupt that the consciousness simply refuses to process what happened. Roberto, a 22-year-old young man, died instantly in a motorcycle accident. For months after his death, the friends he shared his apartment with reported disturbing experiences. The sound of a motorcycle being parked in the garage at 2 a.m., the time he'd usually get home from work, the shower turning on by itself, food disappearing from the fridge. In a mediumistic session, it became clear that Roberto hadn't understood his passage. He was continuing his routine, confused about why his friends were ignoring him. This confusion creates a limbo state where the soul keeps trying to interact with the physical world, using the only patterns it knows. It's like trying to use a turned-off smartphone. The gestures and intentions are there, but the connection has been lost. Cases of violent or traumatic deaths often result in what spiritists call disturbance. The consciousness becomes disoriented, often reliving the moment of death repeatedly, like a scratched record that can't move forward. A soldier killed in combat might keep fighting. A drowning victim might feel like they're eternally suffocating. This state can persist until the new reality is recognized. The most intense paranormal phenomena, objects moving violently, disturbing sounds, sensations of oppression, are usually tied to this state of confusion and denial. It isn't a question of a bad soul, but of deep despair and incomprehension. Dr. Michael Newton, a pioneer in research on life between lives, documented hundreds of cases where disoriented souls were eventually helped by spiritual guides or by deceased loved ones who came to fetch them. That moment of recognition, the moment of, "Ah, so that's what happened," is often described as an explosion of clarity and relief. The ancient Tibetans understood this process deeply. The Bardo Thodol, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, details the states of consciousness after death and offers guidance to the transitioning soul, recognizing that confusion is a natural part of the process for many. What makes this reality even more complex is that time does not flow the same way in the disembodied state. What to us takes decades may be experienced as a continuous moment by a soul in denial. It's like being trapped in a dream where time distorts and stretches. The good news is that this state isn't permanent. Consciousness, by its very nature, seeks expansion and clarity. Eventually, even the most confused souls begin to perceive their new reality and the possibilities it offers. Have we already been through this? Why do I feel like we need to finish something that we started a long time ago? This debt needs to be paid. Imagine an invisible thread that not only runs through this life, but through multiple existences, connecting experiences, relationships, and promises across time. The concept of karma, often misunderstood as simple punishment, is really a principle of balance and continuous learning. Helena, a regression therapist, shared with me the case of an old mansion in the interior of Minas Gerais, where paranormal activity intensified every time new owners tried to renovate. During a spiritual investigation, it was discovered that the entity present had been the property's original builder in the 18th century, who used cruel slave labor methods to erect the mansion. His attachment to the property wasn't merely material, it was karmic. He remained tied to the place out of an unconscious sense of guilt and a need to correct past wrongs. Our karmic patterns work like an energetic code that persists beyond physical death. Unkept promises, unsatisfied moral debts, relationships cut short, these can all create energetic knots that weave through the veil between dimensions and potentially between lives. Edgar Cayce, in his readings on past lives, often described how certain pathological attachments are rooted in experiences from previous incarnations. A notable example was the case of a woman with an irrational fear of water, who discovered she had drowned in a past life. The trauma hadn't been fully processed and persisted as an energetic residue, influencing not only her current life, but also potentially her transition after death. This concept invites us to reflect deeply. What repetitive patterns do you notice in your life? What relationships seem to carry a baggage that transcends your current interactions? What fears seem disproportionate to your experiences in this life? Roger Woolger, a Jungian psychologist and past life regression researcher, documented how certain past life traumas can create what he called soul fragments, parts of the consciousness that become stuck in a specific state and don't complete their transition properly. These fragments can manifest as presences that don't completely belong to either the world of the living or that of the dead. Tibetan Buddhists understand this process so profoundly that their practices for liberating the soul include not just the recently departed, but also the dissolution of karmic attachments from multiple existences. The Phawa ritual, for example, is designed to help consciousness transcend not just the identification with the current physical body, but all the residues of previous lives. For wandering souls, these karmic connections can act as additional anchors. A spirit might remain tied to a location not only because of an attachment to what it lived through in that life, but because of a complex web of experiences that span more than a single existence. It's as if some stories refuse to end, demanding an epilogue that may extend beyond physical death. And while that epilogue isn't written until the lesson is learned or balance is restored, the soul can feel incomplete, unable to move on. Everything here is so strange, not completely solid, not completely ethereal. There are others like me, wandering, trying to understand. There are beings here who were never human. Some want to help, others don't. Between the dense world of physical matter and the higher realms of spirit, there are countless layers of reality vibrational planes that mystics from various traditions call the astral worlds or intermediate dimensions. These aren't just poetic metaphors, but descriptions of states of consciousness and experiential realities as concrete as our physical world, though operating under different laws. Ana Luisa, a full-time channeling medium for over 30 years, describes these dimensions as layers of overlapping frequencies, each with its own characteristics and inhabitants. Think of it like tuning a radio, she explains. Depending on which frequency you tune into, you'll pick up a different station. The dimensions work in a similar way, all existing simultaneously, but we experience the one that corresponds to our conscious vibration. The lower astral plane, often described in spiritist and occult literature, is characterized by landscapes that mirror the physical world, yet are distorted by collective emotional projections. In these realms, thoughts and emotions manifest more quickly, creating environments that reflect the inner state of the consciousness inhabiting them. It is in these planes that many wandering souls find themselves, not completely stuck to the earthly density, yet not free enough to ascend to more subtle dimensions. Imagine a shared lucid dream state, where your beliefs, fears, and desires shape your experience of reality, often without you realizing that you are the creator of that experience. The occultist Robert Monroe, a pioneer in out-of-body research, mapped these realms extensively in his books, describing them as local reality systems. He observed that disembodied souls often cluster by vibrational affinity-like attracts, like even after death. A crucial aspect of these intermediate dimensions is that they are inhabited not only by disembodied humans. Various esoteric traditions, from shamanism to Rosicrucian schools, describe entities that were never incarnated in human form, but exist in these interdimensional planes. Some of these entities are described as benevolent, served as guides and helpers during the transition. Others are characterized as parasitic, feeding on imbalanced emotional and mental energy. For a soul in a state of confusion, fear, or intense attachment, discerning between positive and negative influences can be extremely challenging. Just as on Earth we are vulnerable to manipulation when emotionally fragile, in the astral this vulnerability can be amplified. The Irish medium Lorna Byrne describes in her books how wandering souls can be rescued by angelic beings who find them wandering in states of confusion. However, she also notes that some souls resist this help, either mistrustful or not yet ready to accept their new reality. Protection in these realms comes primarily from a clarity of intention and an elevated vibrational state. Ancient psychic protection practices, visualizing light, invoking spiritual guides, reciting protective mantras, are based on the understanding that consciousness, even when disembodied, can be trained to discern and navigate these multidimensional realities safely. For those who are embodied and sensitive to these dimensions, mediums, empaths, or people undergoing consciousness expansion, the spiritual discipline is crucial. Developing discernment, emotional purification, and alignment with higher purposes act as a compass in this interdimensional ocean. As the ancient Hermetic wisdom teaches, as above, so below. The principles that guide us to live balanced lives in the physical realm, integrity, compassion, clarity, courage, are the same ones that help us navigate safely through the astral planes, whether during meditative journeys while embodied or after physical transition. I know I could go, but I'm just not ready yet. I have to stay and fulfill my mission. This was my choice. It's not a prison, it's a purpose. One of the deepest and sometimes most challenging truths about wandering souls is that many are exactly where they chose to be. Free will doesn't end with the last heartbeat. In fact, in some ways, it becomes even more powerful once released from the limitations of biology and earthly conditioning. I met Antonio during a spiritual investigation in an old hospital. His presence was constant in the main corridor, where many people reported feeling a shadow following them. During our communication, I discovered that Antonio had been a dedicated doctor who died during an epidemic in the early 20th century. His staying wasn't the result of confusion or negative attachment, it was a conscious choice. I can still help those who suffer, he explained. When someone is afraid, I can calm them. When a doctor is lost in a diagnosis, I can guide their intuition. This is my purpose, my mission. This case illustrates an important distinction. There is a significant difference between staying out of unconscious attachment and choosing to remain out of a conscious purpose. The first is a reaction based on fear and identification with the ego. The second is a decision founded on compassion and service. The Buddhist tradition recognizes this distinction through the concept of the bodhisattva beings who, having attained enlightenment, choose to delay their complete liberation from the cycle of rebirth to help all sentient beings achieve liberation. On a smaller scale, many souls make similar choices, remaining in intermediate states out of compassion rather than confusion. Yet, it's important to understand the risks of this choice. The South African medium Marianne Martin often warns about what she calls the astral savior syndrome, souls who, with the best intentions, remain attached to denser vibrational planes longer than necessary, eventually losing their clarity and purpose, and in turn becoming wandering and confused themselves. True spiritual wisdom recognizes that there is a time to stay and a time to move on. As Ecclesiastes teaches, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Even among those who remain out of unconscious attachment, there is an element of choice, even if it may be a choice based on fear or a lack of understanding. A soul attached to material possessions is, on some level, choosing to value those possessions above its own spiritual evolution. A soul trapped by the fear of judgment is choosing to believe in a limited view of divine compassion. That is why the deepest spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of discernment and preparation for death while we're still embodied. As the philosopher Seneca reminded us, we must learn to die during our entire lives. And you, what choices are you making right now that will shape your spiritual journey, not only in this life but beyond? What beliefs are you nurturing? What attachments are you cultivating or releasing? Respecting every soul's free will also means acknowledging that sometimes the kindest choice we can make is to allow others to follow their own path, even when that path involves experiences we consider unnecessary or painful. Every soul has its own time, its own pace of understanding. Light is always present. Sometimes we just need someone to show us the way. Release is a process of understanding, not force. Healing the living often means setting the dead free. There is a delicate dance between worlds when it comes to helping wandering souls complete their journey. It's not about exorcism or banishment terms that carry connotations of conflict and rejection. It's about healing, understanding, and above all, unconditional love. Dona Conceição, a folk healer from the interior of Goiás with whom I had the privilege to learn, approached wandering souls with the same respect and compassion she showed the living. They aren't different from us, she used to say. They're just lost and need direction, like travelers in a foreign land. The methods to facilitate this transition vary among traditions, but they share key principles. Prayer isn't just a religious formality, it's a conscious directing of energy. When done with clear intention and an open heart, it creates a vibrational field that can help confused souls reorient themselves. The Catholic tradition of masses for the dead, the Buddhist Heart Sutra chants, shamanic songs to guide spirits, these practices all operate on the same principle, creating a vibrational beacon that helps the soul find its way. Targeted meditation, especially when practiced by people with developed spiritual sensitivity, can establish a direct communication channel. The Brazilian psychiatrist Inácio Ferreira extensively documented how, through deep meditative states, it is possible to dialogue with wandering souls, helping them understand their situation and visualize possibilities beyond their current state. Energetic cleansing of environments, whether through smudging with sacred herbs as in indigenous tradition, using sounds like Tibetan singing bowls, or visualizations of light taught in Western esoteric schools, is not about expelling presences, but about transforming the vibrational quality of the space, making it less resonant with densities and confusion. Maria Elena, a businesswoman from São Paulo, approached me after months of disturbances in her newly acquired home objects shifting places, a constant feeling of being watched, and nightmares affecting the whole family. During our work, we discovered the presence of the former owner, an elderly gentleman who had died alone in the residence. He remained simply because he couldn't imagine the house running without his care. Instead of forcing him to leave, we conducted a ritual of acknowledgement and gratitude. The family set up a small memorial with his photograph, thanking him for taking such good care of the home over the years. Gradually, we explained that now he could rest, that his work was complete and honored. In the following weeks, the energy in the house completely transformed, not because we expelled someone, but because we helped a soul release an attachment based on responsibility. This case illustrates a fundamental principle. To help souls let go of attachments, we often need first to free ourselves from our own fears and preconceived notions about death and the spiritual realm. The unprocessed grief of the living frequently creates energetic bonds that hinder the soul's transition. Teresa, a psychologist specializing in the grieving process, observes, "When we say, 'I can't live without you,' to someone who has passed, we inadvertently create a bond that can make their spiritual journey harder." Learning to transform paralyzing grief into a loving connection that honors the beloved soul's freedom is an essential part of this process. Healthy detachment doesn't mean forgetting or ceasing to love. It means loving in a way that honors the soul's ongoing journey, recognizing that our connection transcends physical presence. Compassion, not just as an abstract feeling, but as a concrete practice of understanding and acceptance, is perhaps the most powerful tool in this process. When we can see beyond the troubled behavior of a wandering soul to its underlying confusion, fear, or loneliness, we open a channel for genuine transformation. The veil between worlds is thinner than we imagine. The stories we explored today aren't just accounts of ghosts or paranormal phenomena. They are deep lessons about the nature of consciousness, the persistence of love, and the soul's continuous journey. What we learn about wandering souls teaches us as much about life as it does about death. Every attachment we identify in a disembodied soul invites us to examine our own attachments. Every fear that keeps a spirit imprisoned challenges us to face our own fears. Every confusion that prevents a smooth transition reminds us of the importance of clarity and discernment in our own journey. Luciano, a 92-year-old gentleman I met during a spiritual retreat, shared a wisdom I'll never forget. The art of living well and the art of dying well are one and the same. Both require presence, courage, and the ability to let go. Perhaps the most valuable lesson we can take from our exploration is that preparing for a harmonious transition begins right now, not at the final moment. Every attachment we consciously release, every relationship we heal, every limiting belief we transform, every forgiveness we offer to ourselves and others, creates not only a fuller life, but a clearer path for our future journey. And for those of you who feel the presence of departed loved ones or sense unresolved energies in your spaces, remember, the most powerful communication happens through the heart. A simple moment of compassionate acknowledgement, a sincere prayer, a loving mental conversation, these can be bridges of light that help a soul find its way. The ancient traditions teach us that we are all part of a vast tapestry of consciousness, where each thread is intrinsically connected to all the others. When we elevate our own vibration through authentic spiritual practices, we create ripples that affect not only our immediate world, but also the subtle dimensions that surround us. As the ancient Hermetic maxim teaches, as it is above, so it is below. As it is within, so it is without. Our inner work reverberates through the veils of reality, touching not only this world, but all worlds. If this content touched your heart, if you found value in the journey we shared today, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like, share it with anyone who might benefit from this understanding, and join our community by subscribing to the channel. Every time we come together like this, we strengthen a field of consciousness that benefits not only the living, but also those in transition. Remember, light is never truly absent. Sometimes we just need to adjust our vision to see it. And on this journey of expanding consciousness, we are never truly alone. We are connected through time, through space, and beyond. in an eternal dance of spiritual evolution. Until our next meeting, may you walk in the light of understanding, with your heart open to the mysteries that surround and inhabit us. As the mystic Rumi once said, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." We have reached the end of our exploration of wandering souls, but in truth, this is only the beginning of a deeper understanding of our multidimensional nature. As with every great spiritual journey, each answer leads to new questions, and every revelation opens doors to even deeper mysteries. What do we do with all this knowledge? How do we integrate it into our everyday experience? First, recognize that an awareness of death can be our greatest teacher about how to live. The ancient Stoics practiced the memento mori, regular contemplation of our own mortality, not as a morbid exercise, but as a way to clarify our priorities. When we remember that our time here is finite, the trivial loses its power, and what's essential becomes crystal clear. Regina, a retired teacher who survived a near-death experience during heart surgery, shared, "I used to live in the future, always planning, always postponing happiness for when something happened. Now I understand that this moment is all we truly have. That realization didn't bring me fear, but an extraordinary freedom." Second, nurture relationships based on unconditional love, not on dependency or possessiveness. Our emotional bonds are powerful. They can be bridges for mutual growth or chains that hold souls in transit. The psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a pioneer in studies about death and dying, often observed how families who practiced letting go with love created an energetic field that eased the peaceful transition of their loved ones. Third, develop spiritual practices that expand your awareness beyond the exclusive identification with the physical body and personality. Deep meditation, spending time in nature, conscious breathing practices, contemplative, artistic activities, these are all paths to experiencing aspects of our being that transcend material limitations. As the Vedic tradition teaches, you are not the body, nor the mind. You are the eternal consciousness that observes both. I remember Carlos, a pragmatic and skeptical entrepreneur who started meditating simply to reduce stress. 6 months later, he told me, "I started looking for relaxation and found something much bigger. There are moments during meditation when I experience such deep peace, such vast expansion, that I know without any doubt that I am far more than this body, this personality, this life." Fourth, develop spiritual discernment. In a world saturated with contradictory information about spirituality, the ability to distinguish the authentic from the superficial, the transformative from the merely comfortable, becomes essential. As the Gnostic tradition reminds us, know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods. This discernment doesn't come from external authorities, but from deep inner listening, a sincere relationship with your own experience, and the courage to question even your most cherished beliefs. Lastly, practice radical compassion for yourself, for others, for the souls in transition. Compassion is the universal balm that heals wounds on all planes of existence. It is the deep acknowledgement of our interconnectedness, the visceral understanding that, as Martin Luther King Jr. taught us, we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. The story of Julia, an elderly woman I worked with in palliative care, illustrates the power of this compassion. In her final days, Julia began seeing and talking with her deceased husband. The medical team considered these terminal hallucinations, but for Julia, they were real and comforting visits. When I asked if she was scared of these experiences, she smiled serenely. "Why would I be? He came to fetch me, just as he promised. Now I know I won't make this passage alone." Who am I, or who are any of us, to say that Julia's experience was just a hallucination? True compassion invites us to suspend our judgments and make room for mysteries that go beyond our limited categories. And so, as we close this journey together, remember that we are all travelers between worlds. At this very moment, you are simultaneously in a physical body and beyond it. You are, in your current form, finite and yet infinite in essence. The wandering souls we explored today are not fundamentally different from us. They simply reside on another point of the consciousness spectrum, navigating the same challenges of attachment, fear, confusion, and eventual release that we all face on our evolutionary journey. The Christian mystic Meister Eckhart once said, The soul is an unfinished path. This incompleteness isn't a flaw. It is our constant invitation to grow, expand, and transcend. It is the sacred call to continue our journey, not just to the moment of physical transition, but through and beyond it. How will you respond to this call? What steps will you take today to live more consciously with the eternity that already dwells within you? What attachments are you ready to transform? What fears are you willing to face? What love are you prepared to express, knowing that love is the only thing that truly transcends every plane of existence? The answer to these questions isn't in ancient books or the words of spiritual masters. It's in the living laboratory of your own consciousness, in the wisdom that emerges when you allow yourself to be fully present for life in all its dimensions. Thank you for sharing this sacred space of exploration with me. May your journey continue to unfold with grace, courage, and an ever-growing awareness of the infinite light that you already are. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this. Until our next meeting, remember the words of the poet Rumi: "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop."